Hello, NBT Nation. It is another No Boring Training NBT Live, pop up live here on a Tuesday morning, rather. It's that holiday time period here, and where you lose track of time, what day it is, what planet you're on. But No Boring Training is back. NBT Live wanted to get together and really talk about how do I plan training? What is the method that I use to plan out a training session, training program? Most people who are not trained trainers will make a classic mistake. Somebody says, "Hey, we need a training." They say, "No problem." The very first thing they'll do is open up PowerPoint, go to the first slide. What's the first thing I want to tell them? What's the next thing I want to tell them? What's the next thing? And then they end up with 700 pages of slides. It's a jumbled mess. It's not effective training. So, how do I go about it? What's the NBT way of planning a training session? I'm going to share that with you here in today's NBT Live. Hopefully, everybody is doing great out there in NBT Nation, enjoying the holiday time frames. If you find this interesting, please, as always, subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and all of that. So, how do I plan trainings? Well, my friends, let's go to this view here. This is the NBT training session planning tool. This is a template I built for myself years ago. I've used this in my day job. I use it whenever I'm planning training, and it's really helped me dial in the specifics of what I need to get done to be able to quickly produce training sessions and programs and really help get that done quickly. It's gotten to the point now where it's sort of second nature, but I wanted to walk NBT Nation through what this tool can do. So, NBT training session planning tool. I've already got it kind of filled out here, as you can see on the screen. The first section is the analysis section, and this is really kind of the nuts and bolts of what is the nature of the request. So in this case, it's the VP of operations has asked for some training for the subject matter experts and Blauman Incorporated here to give them some train the trainer support on how to deliver effective training. There's about 10 subject matter experts who deliver training on some sort of basis, and they've never really been trained before. So, what is the impact of this? Well, it's wasted time, it's work errors, it's confusion, because the subject matter experts who are responsible to deliver training inside the organization don't know how to train. And therefore, their training sessions are horrible, awful, miserable, boring training. And that wastes everybody's time, theirs and the participants as well. And because the participants are not effectively trained, they go back to their desks and they make mistakes. And then there's confusion. And then all sorts of problems start from there. So, gives this template helps me to really kind of quickly go and outline that. What's a successful outcome from the session? Subject matter experts can identify key elements of effective training. Pretty straightforward. Was there any previous training efforts for this issue? In this mythical case, no. Maybe yes. Who knows? What are the end users saying about this issue? It's not the subject matter experts, but the people actually being trained by the subject matter experts. What are they saying? What are the frontline managers saying? And do we have any data about this issue? So this template really kind of guides me to go fill all those in. And here in today's made up example at Blauman Incorporated, the end users are frustrated. The frontline managers are just so busy. They don't want to interrupt operations for more ineffective training. And the participant feedback from those sessions when they fill out their surveys that's the data, and it is pretty poor. The other nice thing with this tool, if you can see here on the screen where my mouse is, it prompts me to go and say, hey, what is the goal level of understanding what am I trying to achieve? Am I just trying to kind of get them to kind of know the basics? Am I trying to get them to know the basics and a little bit more? Or am I trying to create stud rock star level trainers? What is the goal level of understanding I'm aiming for? What is the starting skill level So, in other words, if they're novices and I'm trying to get them to rock star level, that's a whole different training approach than if they're novices and I'm just trying to get them a little better. I'm just trying to get them to kind of be aware. I know we hate awareness as an outcome, but if you're taking novices and making them aware, that's a much easier hill to climb. So this planning tool, I like it. It's a template that I've used. It really helps dial in what is the level of training that's needed and where am I starting from? Super helpful there. Uh, and then there's also a prompt here. Is there any processes or work instructions related to whatever it is I'm training? And I want to know that because if there's a process or procedure involved, if the answer is no, that's easy. Click that and you're done. If it's yes, I want to know, is that process doctrinal? Is it vetted? Is it locked into place? Is it never changing? Do we have the current rev? Is that readily available? Do I know who the process owner is? Can I go to them? Can they tell me that the process is approved? All of those sorts of things. In this example, there's no process involved, but if there were, the template here prompts me to look at that. So then what I like to do when I'm planning out a session is really get down to the nitty-gritty. What is the actual objective that I'm trying to achieve by the end of the session? In this made up example, my subject matter experts can apply 4 key areas of effective learning uh, to increase participant satisfaction feedback scores. And they can apply that if those 4 key areas to an existing training session. So there's going to be a little bit of workshop to this made up example. That's my objective for this particular situation. The objective could be, want people to be knowledgeable about and can apply information to a set of circumstances. They can correctly apply information to a situation to make better decisions or decisions against pre-planned set of criteria. They can demonstrate certain skills, whatever. But that's my session objective. And I really like to have that spelled out clearly. What is the benefit for the participants? I like to spell that out very clearly here too. So in this case, it's subject matter experts will effectively train other teams and reduce their own overall workload because they won't have people calling them asking questions about something they just got done poorly training the day before. If you do training well, that reduces your workload in the long run because all those people you're supporting as a subject matter expert don't have to call you every 2 seconds with questions. That's the benefit for the subject matter experts. So you have the objective of the session, and then what is the WIFM? What is the benefit for the people that are actually attending? And then how does this training apply to the mission, vision, values of the organization? I like to spell that out here. In this case, at Blauman Incorporated, more effectively trained end users means they'll be more effective, and that'll help us execute on our victory strategy for 26, whatever. But tying training back to mission, vision, values, I always like to do that because that's pushing you back towards the strategic level as opposed to staying in the nuts and bolts mechanics of the session. Now the session may be very nuts and bolts. It may be very down in the weeds, tactical level. Here's how you do XYZ. But at least having a connection back to the mission, vision, values not only helps the end users understand why they're doing the training. Here's how it's going to help you with the day-to-day mechanic stuff, but here's how it helps move the organization forwards. So now your participants are more engaged. It also helps you sell this back to leadership. We're doing this training because it's going to help you execute your victory strategy. Oh, okay, cool. You're going to get a lot more yeses when you go to senior leadership and you walk them through this. This is how this training helps you achieve your outcomes. You get a lot more yeses, a lot more training set aside there. So some other little nuts and bolts here. How much time have I allocated for the training? How much time is actually needed? And then is this in person or virtual delivery? Who's the instructor? What's the anticipated group size? How am I going to measure success of the session? And then that lets me kind of do a quick outline of what we're doing in the session. What I also like to do are what are the 4 key need to know points that the participants absolutely positively need to know by the end of this session to meet that objective. What are the 4 key topics? And here's why I like to spell that out here, kind of in the high level design. Number 1, at some point I'm going to have to go back to the stakeholder and say, "Hey, this is my training plan." And if I can talk about, "Hey, and here are the 4 key things I'm going to hit on." They can go, "Yes, no, maybe, what about this? What about that? You forgot this, you forgot that. Tell me more about this." We can have a productive conversation zeroed in on those 4 key need to know points. Secondly, it's that peer review. When you go back to your stakeholder, you're there to serve them. So if they're saying, "Hey, I want you to do a training," and you come back with these 4 key areas and they go, "Yeah, but," and they have constructive input for you, you may realize you missed the boat, you forgot something, you overlooked something. So it's a real safety catch to make sure you haven't overlooked something, and it helps you improve your training in the long run. The third reason I like to do this is that now it tells me where I need to focus my efforts when I get into the development of the material later on. And then lastly, when I focus on, hey, here are the 4 things that I'm going to hit on in my session. And when I'm sharing that with subject matter or the stakeholders, maybe I have to present this to senior leadership. Now we're talking about those 4 key areas. This naturally moves you beyond a senior leader or a stakeholder getting stuck on, well, what sort of activities are you going to do? What sort of breakout sessions are you going to have? Are there going to be breaks? Is it going to be hands on? You got to have a lot of interaction to make it productive. You got to get people to participate. It moves them beyond all the stuff they tend to focus on because they really don't understand or know what training is. And it focuses them in on these 4 key topics. And then that's what you tend to talk about in your discussions with your stakeholders and your senior leaders, which is what you want to be talking about anyway, right? That's what you want to be talking about. Because if you get those 4 key need to know topics dialed in, and you can get your participants to know those and understand those 4 key topics, the odds of you meeting that session objective, in this case, subject matter experts applying the knowledge to be able to revamp an existing training and get better feedback surveys. Well, if I do a good job with those 4 topics, they're naturally going to get to that outcome, right? So my template here that I've been using really helps me to focus in on that. It's another before I move on here, it's also a great reminder that if you start to have much more than 3, 4 need to know points to reach your session objective, your objective might not be that clear, or you may not have enough time. If it's that complicated of a thing, you might be graduating from session to maybe workshop or full program. So it's a quick stop to say, well, how many need to know points do I actually have? So as we scroll back up, I really like this template. I mean, we haven't even started to really lay out the agenda of the training session yet, but it really helps me do this prep work. A little bit of analysis work on the front end, a little bit of the overall design. The nice thing is I can screenshot this area of my template, send that back to my stakeholder and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What are your thoughts?" Get some input, again, have that collaborative discussion. But it also then allows you uh, uh, to send them up the food chain to senior leaders as well. So lots going on with that template that I find really helpful. So what do you think so far, NBT Nation, before I move on to this next section rather? Let me know, leave me some comments. And if you're watching this on replay, let me know if a template like this might be helpful. All right. The next portion of the template is, so now I have my 4 key need to know areas, right? And I've plugged them in over here. So I'm just going to focus in on one need to know area for this make believe training session. Maybe the first need to know topic is explaining how adults actually learn. You want your subject matter experts to become better trainers, so you need to talk to them about how adults actually learn. Quick little summary. And then what is point number one, two, three, four I want to make about that need to know topic? So, in other words, for them to understand how adults learn, they need to know that training needs to be real, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be entertaining, and it needs to be challenging. Those are, by the way, four of the six key pillars of interesting and effective training. You could take a course about the effective pillars of interesting training, the six pillars of effective training over at noboringtraining.com. Totally free course, and it lines out the six pillars of interesting and effective training. There's four of them right there. So, how adults learn, here's these 4 points that I want to make. The template lines out what are the typical areas of confusion. Some points are going to be pretty straightforward and everybody gets it. There's usually people don't get too hung up on things. But sometimes there will be topics, points that you're making that you just know people struggle with, either because you've taught this 100 times, that's your previous experience, or you're just guessing. I like this template because it maps out, well, where are the areas that they're likely to get stuck? So you can be thinking about that ahead of time when you go to develop your material. The template also prompts you to allocate how much time you might spend on each point. So in this case, I've allocated 15 minutes for each one. So for how adults learn, we're going to spend roughly an hour in the session, 15 minutes per point. And I like mapping this out. Sometimes I'll give a time just based on gut feel. Sometimes it'll be because I've taught this course 100,000 times. Sometimes it's through prototyping that I've already done. I may have done a quick virtual session about how adults learn and training needs to be real to them. And maybe I did a quick virtual session just as a standalone prototype, and it took me 15 minutes. Well, guess what? Now I know that in the classroom, it's going to take about 15 minutes to cover this. And the reason for this is you want to start mapping out, well, how much time is this actually going to take me? How much time do I actually want to spend? Now, once you get into the session, you may spend more or less, depending on whether your estimate was incorrect, or the audience maybe gets hung up and you spend a little bit more time on it. But this at least helps you with the planning. I'm going to scroll over to the right here a little bit. This next session of the template says, okay, for these 4 points, real, relevant, entertaining, and challenging, how am I actually going to train them? Well, for real, I'm going to use Socratic presentation. In other words, I'm going to ask questions and get the audience to kind of think their way through why training being real helps adults learn. Why do they think that's the case? And I'll ask prepared questions that kind of get them to think through and come to a conclusion on their own. And I might use a simulation to demonstrate the point, or a simulation for them to experience what realness means and why the reality of a training helps the adults learn. I'll do a quick little simulation, a couple, 2, 3 minutes, something like that. For the relevant point, I'm just going to do straight presentation. It's 15 minutes. I'm not going to get too many people bored in 15 minutes. I'll keep it lively and entertaining, but I don't need to do anything fancy there. But in the course of doing that, I might include a quick little role play for them to experience what relevancy means and how that ties into the main key takeaway, which is how adults actually learn. For entertaining, we'll go back to Socratic presentation, maybe do a quick little group breakout, and then the importance of challenging, why adults need to be challenged to effectively learn. I'll do a game and a demonstration to kind of get the point across. So a lot of words to say. This template really guides you to figure out, okay, how am I going to go about actually teaching this? How am I going to transfer the information? How am I going to reinforce it? How am I going to get it out of my head and into their head? And then how am I going to give them a chance to apply it? This helps you pre-plan that. It helps you map it out. It helps you choose which method you're going to use. And then, as we see here, for the rest of the key points, or for the rest of the key takeaways, I have gone through the same exercise. And it's a lot of work to go and map all this out. But preparation is what leads to effective training. And so, for relating to business goals, training needs to be related to business goals to make it more effective. I have 4 key points. I've mapped out typical areas for confusion, how long I might spend, how I might go about delivering the training, so on and so forth for the other key points. The template also reminds me to do a crawl, walk, run type progression. And oh, yeah, don't forget to put in breaks, because you can't just sit there and talk for 4.5, 5 hours, or train for 4.5, 5 hours without someone going to the bathroom. So there's a little visual cue to me to say, oh, yeah, maybe you take a break after the first hour. I like an instructor led training hour, hour and a half or so with a break. Before a break, virtual training about an hour with then a break, maybe an hour and a half, depends. I find virtual training to be far more mentally tasking, so I tend to do more breaks for the virtual versions. In the classroom, you can maybe go a little longer, hour, hour and a half, 2 at the most before a break. This template also then prompts me to go ahead and total up the total session time from this column is going to be about 4 hours. How much time am I going to spend on breaks? How much time do I actually need for the session is 4.5 hours. And then does that time, total time, does that line up with the time that I've allocated? In this case, nope. And there's a prompt there to say, hey, you're planning a 4.5 hour long session, but you only have 4 hours to work with. So guess what? Either you got to ask for more time, plan on more time, or you got to carve something out. You got to do something up. You got to reduce some of the time up here. So there's a little bit of a prompt there to make sure you don't overdo it and have a session that's way too long for the time that you've carved out. And then any of these need to know points. Do you need to go and do more research? Now, in this make believe scenario, in the template, I've left it blank, but you may say, hey, you know what? How adults actually learn. I want to go do a little bit more research there. So you could write a note to yourself, go research this website, that website, Google search, whatever. And then this template also prompts me to say, well, what learning materials am I going to need to build from scratch? And here's why that's important. All of this stuff, the simulations, the role plays, the case studies, the demonstrations, the practical exercises, even the straight presentation. Maybe it's the PowerPoint, it's the slide deck that supports all that. How much of that do you already have built? And how much of that do you need to build from scratch? Because guess what that's going to tell you? If everything on that list needs to be built from scratch, I cannot deliver this training tomorrow. It is going to take me time to go put all that together. So that is a great visual reminder of how much time you're going to need before you can be ready to deliver this training. The more you have here, the more time you'll need for the actual development. The less you have here, whatever you can grab and repurpose and reuse and maybe take an older thing and tweak it a little bit, the more quickly you'll be ready to develop. So there's a little bit of a prompt there. The other thing I like about my template, 2 other things. One is there are links here for your resources. So once I actually go out and create my slide deck, I'd put a link right here, a hyperlink, to a Google Shared Drive, OneDrive, whatever. And now I know when I'm talking about my design with my shareholders, I'm taking the design maybe back to senior leadership, and senior leadership says, well, what does your slide deck look like? Click, up comes your slide deck. You're now ready to show them. Maybe you put all your speaker notes in there because, of course, your slide deck is not your speaker notes. So when you go to actually present the training to your stakeholders and your senior leadership and they start asking questions, you can click on speaker notes, it comes up from that shared drive. Boom, you've got that. You can do the same thing for handouts and any videos you might play. Now, you might embed your video into your slide deck. That's like a little less clunky, but if you have separate videos that are not embedded in your slide deck, you can put them all in a shared folder, have that clicked, have that here. So again, you can quickly access them. The last piece about this template that I like in terms of session design is here under evaluation methods. You can see uh, uh, it helps prompt you, how are you going to evaluate that your people are actually learning? Well, we'll talk more about this in a different video, but you can go through here and say, okay, for this key takeaway on this line, I'm going to observe. For this key takeaway, I'm going to do a practical exercise. In this case, the role play. Maybe for this line, I'm just going to go back to observation. And maybe for this key takeaway, I'll have a quiz. Or for this point, I'll have a quiz. So this can help you pre-plan your evaluation methods based on what you might be planning for delivering the training here. So all of this starts to fit together. So let me scroll this back over. This template, it seems like a lot as I've just presented it over the last, say, 20-ish minutes, 26 minutes or so. But I can tell you, taking the time to do all this and map all this out means that when you then go to actually start putting your training together, when you actually start to build your slide deck, you've now got an agenda to follow. Oh, yes. Let me scroll back over here. Now I've got an agenda. And again, you can share this with your stakeholder. You can share this with your senior leaders. I like to just send the design part. I like to just share this part here with senior leaders and stakeholders. But if they really want to get under the hood, if they're really wanting to get into the nuts and bolts, let's dance. Absolutely. I've got it all spelled out here. Here are the four key need to know topics. Here are the points that are going to support those topics. Here are the orders in which I'm going to teach the topics. Here's how I'm going to teach the topics. And then ultimately, here's how I'm going to measure that people actually are learning the topics. Here's how long it's going to take me in total. I'm going to do it in person, virtually, what have you. So you can share all that with your senior leaders. Really speeds up those conversations. It really streamlines those conversations with them during the planning and sort of approvals process. When you go to actually build the content for your session, as I was starting to say, when you go to build your slide deck, now you have an agenda to follow. When you get to slide 5, you realize, oh, geez, I have to have a simulation. So now you build the simulation and put it into your slide deck. When you're building your speaker notes, again, you have something to follow here. When you're building, hey, I need a video here. I needed this. I needed that. Really, really effective way to plan trainings. And this is exactly how I go about it. Again, I've used this for so long that I tend to kind of go through this, but for complicated sessions, new sessions I've never really taught before, or topics that I'm not innately familiar with, I'm going to pull out the template because it helps me kind of get everything organized. It helps me really streamline everything. So get this turned back to the main screen. So there you have it, NBT Nation. How do I go and plan training? Getting distracted by my lighting here. How do I go and plan training? That's exactly how I go about it. I use that template, keeps me on track, and I get everything I need. That template is available over at noboringtraining.com. If you want a blank version of that, it's available for sale over there, that you can go and grab it and utilize it in plan your training the NBT way. But that's the way I use that template, and that's how I go about really kind of mapping everything out. So what do you think, NBT Nation? Would an approach like this be helpful to you? How do you go about planning your trainings? How do you go about sort of putting together an agenda? Let me know what you think. Leave me some comments down below, especially if you're watching this on replay. If you're watching this later on. Let me know what you think. So there you have it, MBT Nation. Hopefully everybody is having a wonderful holiday period rather. Christmas is behind us. There's all sorts of other holidays happening as well. And then of course, New Year's, uh, tomorrow's the last day of 25, and then we start 26 all over again. So hopefully everybody is having a safe, wonderful Halloween. Oh my gosh, holiday time frame. Thanks, MBT Nation. Talk soon.